What's up trainers, Chirpy's here, and in today's video I'm going to walk you through a deck that I believe is very well positioned to absolutely dominate the meta this week. It's a super fun deck to play, and it also features one of my favorite Pokemon, Charizard. That's right, today we're going to walk through the Stoke Charizard deck that we're going to pair with Turtonator, and because of the recent Ursa Day $10,000 largest Pokemon Pocket tournament that just finished this last weekend, I believe that this deck is going to be really well positioned to absolutely dominate the meta that will most likely feature a bunch of the top performing decks from that tournament. Now, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how the deck works, some of the important card selections that we've made in this version of the deck. We're going to talk through some of the top counters that are used against this deck, and then I'm going to walk you through a couple key matchups where I will give you detailed analysis on my decision making and different techniques that I use to pilot this deck successfully. Now, this deck had a lot of success for me, and this was before the meta has even shifted to this post-tournament meta that I believe we're going to see this week. I was able to go on a 10-2 run immediately while playing this deck for the first time on the ladder. I had a 6-game win streak as part of that, over an 80% win rate, and to be honest, this deck felt very, very good. Now, if you like content like this and want to see more of it, I highly recommend that you hit the like button and subscribe below. Otherwise, let's take a look at how this deck works. So the deck is pretty straightforward, and it's really leaning on Stoke Charizard paired with Rare Candy to get the stage 2 on as early as possible, and the Turtonator Kiawe package to essentially have a Pokemon that you can put in early on while you build up that Charizard and pressure your opponent, while also giving you some tools against decks that are running Lucario. Now, in addition to this initial Pokemon package that we're running, we have a singleton of Guzma, which is honestly just an all-star in this meta this month, and almost always has value since there are a lot of decks that are leaning on Pokemon tools in order to be successful. You've got your Rare Candy, which are essential for getting your Charizard online early and more consistently. You've got a Singleton Giant Cape, which is super important and can be used to either give your Charizard that little bit of extra sustain it needs to clear the game out, or you can put it on your Turtonator, which a lot of times lets it clear some of those important breakpoints, like being able to survive a chip shot and attack from a Darkrai, as well as a shot from Giratina, leaving it with an additional 10 HP so that it can swing back at it. Now, the double lilies are super important here, as these are going to be cards that help give your Charizard just that little bit of extra sustain it needs, since a lot of times Charizard is going to have to survive an initial attack to use that Stoke ability and get the energy it needs in order to swing on that following turn. Now, this Lily a lot of times lets your Charizard be able to tank an attack and then gives it enough HP to be able to then also survive another swing from something like a Giratina, oftentimes giving you just enough, sometimes even just 10 HP in order to win the game. Red card also a staple in this month's meta, as it allows you to be able to disrupt your opponent's hands early on, or just try to steal some of that card advantage that decks like Meowscarada try to lean on. And then you've got your Professor's Research and Pokeball, which are staples in just about any deck. So the main cards that are going to be used against you to try to counter your deck or to just disrupt your plans are going to be cards like Mars and Red Card, which are essentially there to slow down your ability of and consistency of evolving your Charizard. Now, the best part about this version of the deck is that you don't really need to rush into evolving your Charizard. In fact, sometimes it's better to just be patient, put your Turtonators up front, let them do the heavy lifting, and then slow build the Charizard on the bench, or build it once it's put into the active spot, because you're going to need a turn anyways in order to use that Stoke ability, and sweep the rest of your opponent's Pokemon. That means that cards like Mars and Red Card, if you're playing this way, have limited impact on you. And so I highly recommend you just really monitor your hand size so that these cards aren't giving your opponent undue card advantage. Now, Lucario and Tapu Lele are super common Pokemon that you'll see in the meta right now, and are really, in a lot of ways, used to counter Pokemon like Charizard. However, that's why we have Turtonator. And you'll notice one really important thing about the way that Turtonator works and the way the breakpoints of the HP values of these Pokemon sit. And it's that Turtonator can wipe out both of these Pokemon in one shot. And this is extremely important, and the reason why a lot of times you want to lean on that Turtonator first in order to clear these hard meta counters out of the way so then Charizard can sweep the rest of the game. Now, I just want to say that this deck is extremely fun to play. It can absolutely demolish just about anything when all of the cards come together. And I will say that the actual biggest issue with this deck really comes down to it being its own worst enemy. That is, you are going to have games where the cards don't come together. And that is okay. You're going to brick. But I found that this deck actually has a crazy amount of consistency considering we're not running cards like Iono or Pokemon Communications. And in fact, because a lot of times you can get that Turtonator up, it buys you the time you need to actually build the Charizard and gives you more of a patient gameplay strategy, which is really, really tough for decks to be able to beat, particularly in the late game where your Charizard can just kind of sweep things the rest of the way. Now, let's take a look at a few of the key matchups and how this deck is piloted and some of the key decisions that you can make when playing it against some of those core counter meta matchups. Okay, so heading into the first matchup here, we're going second, and we see Psychic Energy. So we can assume that we're going to be playing against the Tapu Lele Giratina deck. Ideally, we want to be going first and have a Turtonator and a Kiawe in our hand. That's the dream setup, so that we can immediately start hitting for 90 on that turn 3. Unfortunately, we're going to have to lead on Charmander, and we're staring down a Giratina, a Froakie, and a Tapu Lele. They use a Professor's Research, and honestly, this is the dream setup for our opponent. They have all the pieces that they really want and are looking for, and at this point, we just have our Charmander. And so it looks like unless we draw into the Turtonator here, which we don't, we're going to kind of have to lean on the Charizard, which is a little bit unideal. We see that we have the Charmeleon, which is going to be really important for actually getting us into that final Charizard evolution, but the opponent has a decision to make here. Do they want to start chipping at our Charmander for that measly 20 damage or build up that Giratina in the back, right? And so most likely what they're going to decide to do here is actually power up the Giratina, and just like that, it is 1 energy away from being able to swing for 130, right? This deck doesn't run any Leafs or X-Speeds, so we still know we have another turn here. We use the Professor's Research, and drawing into the Rare Candy is awesome because now we can actually just rush into our Charizard and actually build it up and get those energies on it with the Stoke ability. You're going to see one really important thing here. We're going to actually go ahead and we're going to burn the energy in our energy zone and just use the Stoke ability here. That way, the shot from the Tapu Lele, which they're most likely going to hit us with next turn, will only hit for 80 and not for 100 damage. Now, this is super important, particularly as we have a Lily in our hand, that it's going to allow us to stay above a really important breakpoint, which is that 130 damage from the Giratina. So you see the opponent hits us for that 80. They're getting massive value with that single energy that they put on it. And we draw into a cape. Now this is great. Having the cape and having 2 lilies to be able to follow up with across the next couple turns is huge. And so this is what I'm talking about, is having these 2 lilies, having the cape. This gives that Charizard enough sustain to be able to survive that first shot from the Tapu Lele, be able to survive another shot from either a Tapu Lele or a Giratina, and being able to hit back. So you see we clear out the first Tapu Lele, and most likely the opponent's going to bring in that backup Tapu Lele. We're really just hoping they can't evolve into their Greninja, as that's going to continue to put way too much pressure on us, and we don't really have a great follow-up at this point after this Charizard. And so we wait to see what the opponent does. They do put the energy on the Tapu Lele, and they're going to hit us for a whopping 100 damage. Now, this is really important, as with the cape and with this follow-up Lily that we have, we are able to actually get our HP to the perfect HP value. So as long as they can't evolve into their Greninja, we are going to be able to survive that next shot from the Giratina by 10 HP. Now, that's crazy. Now, this Turtonator in the back, great. We will have the extra point to be able to give up if this Charizard does get cleared. But to be honest, it's not going to be able to survive a shot from a Giratina. We already used our last cape, and so that 120 HP value on it is not enough to be able to survive. So we really have to hope that they can evolve into a Greninja or are not running a red. But as you can see, having those lilies, having the cape, facing a deck that honestly is meant to counter decks like ours, and in a lot of ways had that dream initial setup We are lucky that they did brick here, but we're able to go ahead and take this game. All right, so getting into the next matchup here, we're going second, and we see Fighting Energy. So we have the opportunity to lean on either Charmander or Turtonator here, and because we have that Kiawe in our hand, we're going to go ahead and lean on that Turtonator. Now, going second is kind of the second most ideal setup here, where we can, add that energy onto the Turtonator. We can then go ahead and use the Kiawe, load it up, and then by turn 4, we're hitting for that 90. So not the most ideal. Going first and having this setup is the most ideal, but really this still puts us in a position where we can be super, super aggressive. And this is going to be necessary because we're a long ways away from being able to build that Charmander up in the back, right? We're going to need to see a number of cards to be able to get that rare candy, get that Charizard, or even get that Charmeleon in that Charizard. And having this second Turtonator come in is super, super helpful because this gives us, once again, another Pokemon to be able to lean on while we slow roll and patiently get to that Charizard on the back. And the nice thing is you don't have to put any energies on Charizard until you're ready to move it into the active spot. Use that Stoke and load it up, right? So we can focus on putting all of our energies on Turtonator, either to refill this Turtonator in the active spot so that we can keep hitting, or to be able to start building up that Turtonator behind it. You see the opponent Iono, so they're obviously looking for some cards here to be able to hit their evolutions, be able to put pressure on us. We obviously get hit and pull another Charmander and a red card, so not that ideal. We're kind of, generally beyond the point where red card's going to be good since they're emptying their hand, and a fourth, basic here doesn't really do us a lot of good as, we're highly likely not going to get to build a second and use a second Charizard here. So we see the Guzman once again, right? Like we are going to have to lean on our Turtonators here. Like this may even be a game where we have to plan on not even being able to get to a Charizard and building that Charizard. So you see we're able to cleanly knock out their first Pokemon, which is great, right? We're able to put immediate pressure on them. And now they're sitting here with a Cranidos with a cape on it. And this is a little bit deadly. We're really hoping that they can't find their stage 2 here and evolve it. But instead, it looks like they're going to use the rare candy to use that last card in their hand and get the Garchomp. So the opponent here has some options, right? They're going to be able to hit us for 50, put pressure on us. And this is where Guzma comes in handy and is amazing, right? You see here that Cranidos now with the cape is just perfectly over that breakpoint that we can hit it with on our Turtonator. We can go ahead, put the cape on the Turtonator, and this is important because we know that once we clear this Cranidos, we'll use the Guzma, clear their cape, and then be able to swing for 90 and clear it. They're going to be able to come in with their Garchomp, add an energy to it, and be able to hit for 50. But now that we've put that cape on our Turtonator, we can ensure that it will get one more attack into the Garchomp before it's able to be taken out. The Garchomp can hit for 50, it can then hit for 50 again, and then it can eventually hit for 100 once it gets to that third energy. Now this is really, really important here, right? So you can see here, we have a Turtonator in the back with one energy on it, and then we've got a Turtonator in the lead, which essentially needs another energy. So depending on what they do here, this is going to give us an important decision-making point in time. So we can put the energy on the lead Turtonator here and basically only guarantee that we're going to get one more hit because the Turtonator in the back won't have enough energy. However, we know that because the Garchomp can only hit for 50 this turn and 50 next turn, if we actually put the energy on the Garchomp or the Turtonator in the back, it ensures that we get 2 attacks into the Garchomp. Now, this is super, super important, right? So they have to make a decision here. If they use their attack to clear the initial Turtonator, I essentially can bring in my Turtonator in the back and I can hit it for a 90. And then they can hit me for 100 and then I can hit them for another 90, right? So this deck also only runs one cape. You saw we've already cleared that tape for them. And so we're going to go ahead and now put the energy on that lead Turtonator. Go ahead and red card them just to try and remove anything from their hand that could come back to bite us. For instance, a Sabrina here is something that could be problematic for us. We're going to swing into the Garchomp and drop it down to 80. So now it is in KO range, and depending on where they go with this next attack, the lead or in the back, it still ensures that we can hit them and clear them. And there it is. We're able to take that game. All right, getting to the next game, we see we're going first, so we got a good start. Looking at Grass Energy, this is the dream. We've got the Turtonator to lead on and the Kiawe to be able to load it up, and we're going to be hitting for 90 super effective damage by turn 3. And to be honest, there's nothing that our opponent can do, and I can't tell you how many times I was in this matchup and basically forced to concede within the first few turns. And that's most likely what's going to happen here. They really have no outs. They see the writing on the wall, and there you go. That's how you strategically play the Meowscarada deck. All right, getting into the next matchup here, we see that we're going second, and we're going to take a peek at the energy, and then we see that we're dealing with fighting energy. And so we know this is most likely going to be a Rampardos deck. We're just not sure what it's going to be paired with. We lead our Charmander because we don't really have many other options here, but you can see that we do have a rare candy and a Charizard in our hand. So pending we don't get a red card or a Mars thrown at us, we should be able to lean on an early Charizard here, which should be okay. Now, the unfortunate thing is that we see Riolu, and we know that this is going to be a Rampardos deck that's going to be boosted by a Lucario. And we know that this is a deck where we're going to have to battle through a number of single point prizes. And a lot of times, even an early Charizard isn't enough to do that. And so we're going to have to be really careful how we play this out, because this is a deck where you ideally want to lean on Turtonator first to kind of clear the way with at least one or two Pokemon and then sweep with that Charizard. And so, drawing into the Turtonator, drawing into the Giant Cape here gives us some options. We're going to take this energy and we're debating, do we put it on the Charmander and then swing into the Riolu? Chip damage isn't really going to do much benefit for us as we don't carry a Cyrus in this deck. Or do we go ahead and place it on the Turtonator, because we know that Charizard actually only needs its energy when it's going to attack with that Stoke ability. And so we put the energy on the Turtonator just to kind of start loading that up. We see that they also have the rare candy here, and so they're going to be able to evolve into a really, really early Rampardos. Now, the fortunate thing is that they don't carry X-Speeds or Leafs in this deck, and so we don't really have to worry yet about them swinging into us with that Rampardos. And so here, we're most likely going to also rare candy ourselves into our own Charizard, knowing that they're most likely not going to be able to red card or Mars us here, and kind of play the game out from there. Now, it looks like they do also draw into that Mars Shadow, and as you can see, they have a few options, right? They can basically just keep throwing single point prize Pokemon at us and wear us down. And so here we're going to, at this point, just straight up rare candy and evolve into our Charizard. And then really hope that we can draw into something like a Lily, where we can try to repair some of that damage that this Charizard is most likely going to end up taking. Another alternate option here that would be amazing is if we could actually draw into another Charmander and actually evolve into a second backup Charizard before they're able to take out the first one. That would be what is most ideal here, since our Turtonator on the back doesn't have the HP it needs to be able to survive against that Rampardos. And this is potentially an error. Putting the cape on the Charizard doesn't really give us any sort of like additional breakpoint here. Instead, we could have saved it for the Turtonator, which would have put it at 140 HP, and pending they didn't have that Lucario to power up the Rampardos, we would have been able to survive one of its attacks, which would give us a little bit of play. But now we're stuck with that cape on the Charizard. And we're going to go ahead and debate whether we use this red card or not. Looks like we're most likely just going to put the energy on the Charizard and then start building up and evolving into that Charizard on the back. And so having drawn into that Charmander is pretty essential here, because now it gives us the that scenario where we can swing here, clear this Pokemon out. We can then survive an incoming attack from Rampardos if they decide to go that route, or they could bring in the Mars Shadow and continue to chip us here, and then guarantee that their own Rampardos can hit us and take us out. Here, they do draw that backup Riolu, which is a little bit scary. That means that there still is an opportunity that they can evolve into a Lucario, and then that Rampardos is going to be hitting for 150, right? And it's going to have that extra damage. And so looks like it wouldn't even have mattered if we had saved the cape and put it on our Turtonator. we go ahead and evolve into that backup Charmeleon. And so here we could either put the energy on the Turtonator or we could put it on the Charmeleon. It doesn't really matter at this point. Our play is knowing that we're going to evolve into that backup Charizard, and then we're going to use it to essentially try to sweep the game. So here their only real option is bringing in that Rampardos, and if they want to swing into us, they are going to have to take that recoil damage. And so, to be honest, they're not in a great spot, right? We know our Charizard has enough HP to be able to survive a Rampardos attack, even boosted by a Lucario once we put that in. So they're really just hoping that we don't have a backup Charizard to be able to play into, and in that case, we really wouldn't have much of a shot here, right? We wouldn't have any Pokemon at this point that could clear the Rampardos, and so we're going to go ahead, bring that Charmeleon in. We're going to play the Charizard, show them that we have it. And at this point, I think the opponent knows that there's not really much they can do unless they have a Sabrina. Now, this deck is a deck that's been known to run a singleton of a Cyrus or a Sabrina. So if they have that, that is pretty much their only out here. And so we're going to go ahead and put this energy on Turtonator. We're going to use the Stoke ability on Charizard, or the Stoke attack, power it up. And at this point, it just comes down to, do they have that Sabrina to be able to pull that Turtonator up and get that last knockout point? Opponent takes a look. I pull my concede menu open, waiting to see the Sabrina and end the game quicker. But it looks like they don't have it, and we're able to take the win there on the back of 2 Charizards. All right, getting into the next matchup, we see that we're going second, and we take a look at the energy and see Psychic Energy. So once again, we're going to start game planning for a Tapu Lele Giratina deck. We see that we have the option of leading Charmander or Turtonator, but we don't have the Kiawe. And so we also have a backup Charmander. And so this is an interesting decision, right? We're going to make the choice to bring one Charmander in as the lead, something that we can actually put an energy on and start chipping early, Turtonator behind it, and another Charmander behind it. And so the idea here is that we ultimately are going to lead with that initial Charmander, try to chip the Tapu Lele, bait the Tapu Lele into hitting the Charmander instead of powering up the Giratina behind it, while we either most likely put energy on Turtonator and build the Charizard. Now, there is an opportunity here where we could evolve into an early Charizard if we draw into it with the professor's research, and that would essentially change the game plan a little bit. And so we see that we actually pull the Charmeleon here. We're going to put the energy on the Charmander, and we're going to start swinging into the Tapu Lele. And our plan and our hope is that we can essentially either quick evolve that lead Charmander, or we know we can build that Charmander in the back into a Charizard a little more slowly, and if we need to, use Turtonator in between in order to put a little more damage and pressure the opponent a little bit. So you can see they're opting to build that Giratina. Giratina's at 2 energy, and so we have an opportunity here to bait the Tapu Lele into swinging into our Charizard, which would then slow down the Giratina's ramp. And so we're going to put the Charmeleon on the back Pokemon to have that as a backup Charizard if we need it. We don't need the energy on it, and we don't need any more energy on our Charizard in the active spot, so we put it on the Turtonator, and we use the Stoke ability here. Now, we know that this opponent is going to put an energy on Tapu Lele, and they're going to swing into our Charizard. That's going to bring us down to 100 HP. Without a Lily to essentially recuperate some of that, we do have a cape that can help us stay above that particular breakpoint. But we're going to go ahead and assume that they don't have a follow-up Tapu Lele here and play it out that way. And so drawing into the Pokeball, we can actually pull our last Turtonator out. Honestly, it doesn't really do us a whole lot, as I doubt we're actually going to, at this point, use our Turtonators. We put that final energy on the Charizard, and we're going to clear out the Tapu Lele. Now, the good thing here is that we were able to evolve in the Charizard quick enough that we were able to stall out their Giratina. So their Giratina still needs a whole nother turn in order to be able to be in a place where it could attack into our Charizard. Now, our Charizard, not putting the cape on it, could be a mistake here. We know that with 5 energies and a backup Tapu Lele, they can just burn their energy on Giratina, bring in a Tapu Lele, and clear our Charizard, and we have nothing behind it to really follow up. They might assume we have a backup Charizard to play on that Charmeleon, but we're still 2 energies away from being able to swing with Turtonator. They do have the backup Tapu Lele, and this is massive, right? Instead of putting the energy on the Tapu Lele, pulling out the Giratina, resetting the Giratina, and swinging into our Charizard, they actually decide to bank on the cape being able to save them. Now, we draw into the nuts here. We've got the Guzma, we can clear the cape off of the Giratina, and we now know our Charizard can clear their Pokemon and win this game. And honestly, the opponent made a pretty big mistake by not swapping the Giratina out and putting the energy on Tapu Lele. We didn't have the follow-up Charizard, and a good chance that we weren't going to draw into it. And we're able to go ahead and take that game and once again beat the Giratina Tapu Lele matchup. All right, trainers, and to summarize, I just want to say that this deck was a ton of fun to play. It has the opportunity to burn through opponents on the ladder so quickly, whether that's pairing Kiawe with a Turtonator and hitting for 90 as soon as turn 3, or pairing a rare candy with your Charizard and hitting for 150 as soon as turn 5. This deck has the opportunity to just absolutely go bonkers. I think that you're going to start seeing a lot of grass decks, particularly Meowscarada and Decidueye decks on the ladder this week, as they did really well in the Pokemon Pocket Ursidae 10K tournament this last weekend. And I believe that this deck is well positioned to help you grind out the ladder for the remainder of the season. And it's just going to be super, super powerful. If you like content like this and you want to see more of it, I really appreciate you making it all the way to this part of the video. If you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.